The mustache is a timeless and iconic style that has stood the test of time. Whether you're a cowboy, a businessman, or just looking to add a touch of rugged masculinity to your look, growing a mustache is the perfect choice. So whether you're a fan of history, fashion, or just some good old facial hair, you're in for a ride. Here are the 30 most notorious mustaches of the Old West. Number 30. You know, in those old pictures of Buckskin Charlie, he's always rocking a mustache. Something pretty unique for Native Americans back in the day. This dude was the leader of his tribe, and he had this cool idea of sending their kids to learn from the white folks and go to church. Born around 1842, he was a true Colorado native from the start. His dad was Ute, and his mom was Apache, but sadly they both passed away before he even hit 11. Despite that start, he grew up to be a warrior, taking part in a bunch of fights against other Plains Indians. You know what's so cool to look at? His bullet scar right on his forehead from one of those skirmishes. Yep, he has one. Number 29, James Hamilton Peabody. Guess what? This man rocked a stash and ended up being Colorado's 13th governor. Peabody wasn't always a big shot, though. He started in the political scene as the county clerk of Fremont County, holding that role from 1885 to 1889. And he also served as a treasurer and even wore the mayor hat for a couple of years in Cannon City. City council? Yep, he did that for 2 years. Then, out of the blue, he snagged the Republican nomination for governor in 1902 and actually won the election. But here's where things get interesting. While he was in charge, he had to handle a bunch of labor strikes. The whole miners' wages and labor unions deal was pretty darn controversial, let me tell you. Number 28, WYATT EARP. WYATT EARP was like the ultimate Wild West figure. He did it all, ran saloons, played cards, enforced the law, slung guns, you name it. But you know what he's most famous for? That showdown at the OK Corral back in 1881. I mean, he's practically a Western superhero. Some stories claim he took down around 30 guys when he was wearing the lawman badge on the American frontier. But here's the kicker. It's like his mustache had some secret power or something, because folks say it could knock him over cold without even needing bullets. Now that's a stash with some serious charisma. Number 27, Harry Longabaugh, A.K.A. the Sundance Kid. When you're out there robbing trains, you gotta have that look that just says, "Respect me." And that's exactly what the Sundance Kid did. He grew himself a mean mustache. So Harry Longabaugh, a.k.a. the Sundance Kid, was all about that outlaw life. He rode with Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch crew. Rumor has it that he and Butch probably crossed paths during some hunting trip way back in 1883 or even earlier. Now here's the kicker. That Wild Bunch gang, they went on a record-setting spree, pulling off the longest streak of successful train and bank heists in American history. Crazy times, right? Number 26, Joshua Chamberlain. So you've heard the tale, right? Chamberlain, this Civil War hero, apparently got his killer swinging gate attack move straight from his mustache. At least that's what the legend says. Chamberlain was all about the Union Army during those intense times. He was like the big boss of the 20th Regiment Maine Volunteer Infantry and led his crew right into the Battle of Gettysburg. They were holding down the fort on the left side of Little Round Top and totally rocked it to make sure the Union came out on top. And get this, his rep as a top dog in the U.S. Army lives on in movies, TV shows, and stacks of books all about the Civil War. Number 25, William Poole, a.k.a. Bill the Butcher. If you've heard of William Poole, you'd know they called him Bill the Butcher. This dude was like the head honcho of the Washington Street Gang, and they eventually got famous as the Bowery Boys Gang. Now let's talk about that 19th century mustache. It was like the King of Washington back in the day. He wasn't just into street life. He dabbled in some serious underground fights, like bare-knuckle boxing matches that were too tough for the rule book. And wait for it, he was a total whiz with a knife, too. Makes sense, right? Guy was a butcher by trade, so those skills came in handy. Number 24, Wild Bill Hickok. So after the McCandless gang thing, this man decided to rock a mustache and started going by Wild Bill. Wild Bill Hickok was a real character, always spinning wild stories about his crazy adventures out west. I mean, this guy did it all. Wrangled wagons, did some spy work for the Union, played sheriff, slung guns, and even tried his luck at gambling. But what really made him a legend was that super-fast draw showdown with Davis Tutt in 1865. And don't forget, he got into some seriously famous shootouts throughout his life. This guy was like a walking Western movie. Number 23. You've seen Buffalo Bill Cody, right? That handlebar mustache of his is as famous as his cowboy hat and boots. But here's the scoop. That cool stash wasn't just his thing back in the day. Lots of guys in the late 1800s and early 1900s rocked the handlebar style, especially those in the military. But let's give credit where it's due. Buffalo Bill really made that stash famous. He turned it into a symbol of toughness, charm, and all things Wild West. Oh, and that nickname Buffalo Bill? He got that after supplying buffalo meat to railroad workers post-Civil War. Word is he took down a whopping 4,282 buffaloes in just a year and a half. That's crazy. Number 22, Frederick Douglass Jr. Meet Frederick Douglass Jr. Yep, the son of that famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass. He lived in Berry Farm, Hillsdale, and did some pretty cool stuff. When the Civil War was on, he pitched in to get African-American folks to join up with the Union Army. Now fast forward to the 1870s. He, his brother, and his dad started a newspaper called the New National Era to help out newly freed enslaved people. He was all about women's suffrage, leading the charge for it in Berry Farm, Hillsdale. Number 21, Pawnee Bill. Now let's talk about Gordon William Lillie, or as everyone knew him, Pawnee Bill. This guy was all about the Wild West shows and putting on real performances. He even teamed up with Buffalo Bill Cody for a while. Talk about a dynamic duo. He was totally living that Wild West life just like many others. And get this, in 2010, he got a spot in the Hall of Great Westerners over at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Now that's some real cowboy recognition. Number 20, Tom Ketchum. Here's the scoop on Blackjack Ketchum. He kicked off as a legit cowboy, but then teamed up with his bro Sam to rob trains and stagecoaches. They had a thing for snagging payrolls. Easy cash right there. He was in the hole-in-the-wall gang, but he got nabbed and things got messy during a messed-up hanging. He's the only one who got the death penalty for messing with trains in New Mexico. Crazy thing is, that law got thrown out later, but too little too late for him. Number 19, Kit Carson. Not all cowboys turned bad. Some kept it real, like Christopher Carson, or as folks called him, Kit. This guy was all about the legit life. Trapper, guide, soldier, even an Indian agent. He wore a lot of hats. Kit had 2 Native American wives. The twist, he also led missions against native tribes. His cowboy journey started with a classic move, running away from home to join a Santa Fe caravan. Number 18, Doc Scurlock. All right, let's talk about those cowboy legends like Doc. Real name, Josiah Gordon Scurlock. This guy started off as a line rider keeping those rustlers at bay, but then guess what? He goes and starts the Regulators, like a bunch of cowboy vigilantes. They even dusted a dude named Jesus Largo out of jail just to hang him. Doc was no slouch. He became a deputy sheriff and even dabbled in medicine, hence the cool nickname. Number 17, Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves started out as a slave, but totally flipped the script and became a legendary cowboy. He was the first black deputy in the Deep South. As a U.S. Marshal, he nabbed more than 3,000 folks and had 14 instances where he had to go all self-defense mode. Clean kills, mind you. And get this, during the Civil War, he was on the Confederate side before making a daring escape from his owner. He kicked it with Native Americans for a while, and some folks think he's the Lone Ranger. But you know how history sometimes gets a makeover. Number 16. TIBURCIO VASQUEZ. Mexican cowboys were called vaqueros and were sometimes seen as outlaws. One famous vaquero was TIBURCIO, born in California. He got involved in the Belcher Road feud. TIBURCIO thought of himself as a Mexican-American activist and said he did bad stuff because he faced discrimination and wanted to protect himself. He was a hit with the ladies, too. Number 15. Pistol Pete. You won't believe this, but his nickname is a hit with both NBA ballers and Disney folks. But guess who the OG Pistol Pete is? It's none other than Frank Eaton, a total wild mix of sheriff, cowboy, and even a scout for the military. He got his hands on a gun when he was just 8, all because some regulators took out his anti-slavery dad. He kind of made his own fame, spreading stories about himself, and get this, he even wrote a couple of books that scream Wild West vibes. Nowadays, he's like a top-tier mascot. Number 14. Augustin Chacon. Augustin Chacon, known as El Peludo, or the Hairy One, had a reputation as a tough guy. Surprisingly, he was quite popular among settlers who saw him more like a Robin Hood figure than a regular criminal. Historian Marshall Trimble noted that Chacon was one of the wild desperados of the Old West era, riding through Arizona in the early 1900s. He was no joke, took down around 30 folks, until Burton C. Mossman caught him. Chacon met his end on the hangman's rope in 1902. Number 13. Kingfisher. In the wild days of the American Wild West, one standout character was John Kingfisher, down in southwest Texas. He made sure everyone called him King, whether they liked it or not. His crew wreaked havoc along the Rio Grande for 10 years, taking on anyone who dared to challenge him. Rumor had it that he even got rid of witnesses, but he never got pinned for rustling, horse theft, or murder. King's rule came to an end when Texas Ranger Captain Leander McNelly finally nabbed him. Number 12. Douglas H. Cooper. Douglas Hancock Cooper wore a lot of hats. He was a politician, a soldier, an Indian agent in present-day Oklahoma, and even a Confederate general in the Civil War. He was all in for the Mexican-American War, thinking it could score more land for slavery's sake. He got a regiment going, the 1st Mississippi Rifles, and fought as a captain under Colonel Jefferson Davis. They teamed up for the battles of Monterey and Buena Vista, where Cooper's courage got him noticed. Number 11. Meet Nathaniel Kimball N.K. Boswell, a true American frontier guy. He wrangled cattle, tamed the wild, and even wore the sheriff's badge out west. But what he's really famous for is putting together the N.K. Boswell Ranch. Once he hung up his lawman cap, he and his family ran that ranch like champs. Nowadays, that very ranch stands as a snapshot of the past, showing off what a medium-sized ranch was like back then. They even got it on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. Number 10. Edward Franklin Bowers. So there's this guy, Edward Franklin Bowers, a real cowboy sheriff of the Old West. He was out there in Yavapai County, Arizona Territory from 74 to 78, wearing the badge and chasing down the bad guys. He actually tried to be sheriff before in 1872, but didn't quite make it. No worries though, he snagged the position in 74 and 76 thanks to the People's Party. 4 years of keeping the peace. Oh, he also got a gig as a deputy U.S. Marshal in 78, just to top it off. Number 9. Liver Eating Johnson. You won't hear many folks using his full name, John Jeremiah Garrison Johnson, too much of a mouthful. Out in the Wild West, he went by something a whole lot punchier. Liver Eating Johnson. Now here's the wild part. Back in 1847, his wife was tragically taken from him, and you can guess the rest. He went out on a vengeance spree that earned him that unforgettable nickname. Number 8. Hugh McElroy LaRue was a real California trailblazer with some Kentucky roots. This guy was all about politics and was a die-hard Democrat. He gave being sheriff a shot in 1857 for Sacramento County, winning by a hair, but legal drama snatched it away. No worries though, He bounced back in 1873, bagging the sheriff gig with a big vote tally this time. He wore that badge for a good stretch, dealing with some high-profile murder cases and even overseeing some hangings. Number 7, Heck Thomas. Now here's the scoop on Henry Andrew Heck Thomas, a frontier lawman who really knew his stuff, especially in Indian territory. He's the guy who helped put a stop to the Wild Bunch, also called the Doolin-Dalton Gang. Thanks to Heck's unwavering chase, the gang tried a double heist in Coffeyville, Kansas, but that didn't fly, and they went down in a shootout that took out 4 of them. Heck was on a roll, leading a posse in '96 that took down outlaw Bill Doolin. Number 6, Bucky O'Neill. Prescott, Arizona still holds a torch for William Owen Bucky O'Neill, even a century after he's gone. You can't miss his name all around town, from Bucky's Casino to Bucky O'Neill Sporting Goods, and it's no wonder why folks still dig him. That Captain William O'Neill Rough Rider Monument by Solon H. Borglum is still right there in the Yavapai County Courthouse Plaza, standing tall since 1907. It's basically a Prescott classic at this point. Number 5, Ed Parmley. Ever heard of Everett Dumas Nix, or just E.D. Nix for short? He was a real-deal U.S. Marshal back in the late 1800s, dealing with the wild scene in what would become Oklahoma. He got his start in 1893 when the Old West was on its way out, and Judge Parker was on his way out too. But, well, things didn't stay rosy for Nix. He got the boot in '96 after a money mishap that had folks pointing fingers. Number 4, Pat Garrett. Pat Garrett was a total cowboy, rancher, and lawman. But what really put him on the map was taking down Billy the Kid. Back in 1879, he started as a deputy sheriff, then upgraded to the sheriff gig. Fast forward to July 1881. He hunted down and took out Billy the Kid, who had escaped and caused a ruckus. But here's the twist. Garrett himself got shot while cruising from the ranch to Las Cruces, New Mexico. The guy who rented the ranch, Wayne Brazel, claimed Garrett pulled a gun on him, saying it was self-defense. And guess what? A witness backed him up, so Brazel walked free. Life's full of crazy stories, ain't it? Number 3, Ben Daniels. Long before he joined up with Teddy Roosevelt and stormed San Juan Hill as a Rough Rider, Daniels had a wild ride himself. He was out there hunting buffalo, taking on gambling, and even served as an assistant city marshal in Dodge City during the 1880s. Lawman gigs ran in his veins. He was part of the intense Gray County, Kansas War. Right before he signed up, he was a cop and a gambler in Cripple Creek, Colorado. Once his Rough Rider days were done, he set up shop in Nogales, Arizona, diving into mining investment. Number 2, Bill Miner. Meet Ezra Allen Miner, but folks really dug calling him Bill Miner. He had quite the bandit gig going on. He spent a good chunk of time behind bars for robbing stagecoaches. What really set him apart was his crazy politeness while he did his heists. They even called him the Gray Fox, Gentleman Robber, or the Gentleman Bandit. Quite the fancy titles for a robber, right? He's even rumored to have come up with the classic hands up line. And get this, legend says he'd tell his partners to shoot but spare lives if things got hairy. Number 1, J.H. Doc Holliday. You know John Henry Holliday, right? He was tight with Wyatt Earp, like buddy level. They even gave him a deputy gig in Tombstone, Arizona, right before that epic showdown at the OK Corral. But Holliday wasn't just about gunslinging. This dude had his share of wars, too. He joined the Cherokee Indian War and even jumped into the Mexican-American War. Talk about a history buff. Now, if you're curious, why'd they call him Doc Holliday? Well, get this. After just 1 year of fixing teeth, he ditched the dental scene for some more thrilling action. He started hitting up gambling joints and found out that poker was way cooler and more lucrative than pulling teeth. So his pals at the saloons were like, hey, forget the doctor stuff, let's call him Doc. And that's how he got his infamous nickname. Life sure takes some unexpected turns. And there you have it, folks. The 30 most notorious mustaches of the Old West. From rugged lawmen to infamous outlaws, these facial follicles have left their mark on history. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.